Chaos erupts here in LA County. Widespread immigration raids triggering protests from Paramount to downtown. And tonight, an unlawful assembly has been declared as President Trump announces he will be deploying thousands of National Guard troops here to Los Angeles.
Extraordinary images out of Los Angeles tonight. Hundreds of National Guard troops now on the ground, deployed by President Trump, even though state leaders say they didn't ask for them and don't want them there. You see members of the National Guard with weapons, with body shields and tear gas canisters, all as protesters gather for day 3 of demonstrations against federal immigration raids.
I wasn't planning on making this video, but after this weekend, after seeing the footage, reading the stories, watching the escalation unfold in my home state, I knew I couldn't stay silent. What's happening in Los Angeles right now isn't just about immigration raids or protests. It's about the soul of our country, about who gets to live here, who feels safe here, and what it means when a government decides to use force instead of compassion. So today, I want to talk to you, not just as a creator, but as a person, about what just happened in LA, why it matters, and why staying silent shouldn't be an option. Let's start from the beginning. The tension didn't explode all at once. It started with a spark. On the morning of Friday, June 6th, 2025, Homeland Security agents conducted a series of immigration raids across Los Angeles. One of the first was outside a Home Depot just west of downtown. A few hours later, agents hit Ambiance, a clothing store in LA's fashion district. 4 search warrants, 44 arrests, and that was just the start. What made this different, what made this public, was that people were there. They were watching and recording. One of those people was David Hureta, the president of the Service Employees International Union. He was arrested for allegedly interfering with federal agents, though the union says he was simply exercising his First Amendment right to document what was happening. By around 6:30 p.m. on Friday night, more than 100 people had gathered at the Immigration Services Building and Detention Center in downtown LA to protest the raids. By 7 p.m., LAPD declared it an unlawful assembly and ordered the crowd to disperse. About half an hour later, multiple police vehicles and at least 50 officers in riot gear arrived. Some protesters threw broken concrete. Police fired tear gas, pepper spray, and flashbang rounds. The next day, Saturday, the protests spread. In Paramount, a city with a large Latino population just south of LA, demonstrators gathered in anticipation of another possible raid. Tensions quickly escalated. Protesters tried to block ICE transport vans. Officers responded with flashbangs and more tear gas. Then, that evening, President Trump ordered 2,000 National Guard troops to deploy to Los Angeles. He labeled the protest radical left riots and framed the deployment as necessary to maintain law and order. That night, violence intensified. Protesters threw rocks, bottles, and fireworks at officers. LAPD declared parts of downtown LA an unlawful assembly zone again and began clearing protesters with force. Sunday marked the peak of the unrest. 2 large protests converged near the Metropolitan Detention Center in downtown LA, the same facility where many of the arrested immigrants were being held. Crowds surged. Clashes erupted. Tear gas filled the air. Law enforcement authorized the use of less lethal munitions. California Highway Patrol cleared protesters blocking the 101 freeway. In total, dozens were arrested across the city. Several cars were torched. At least 3 officers were injured. LA Mayor Karen Bass described the city as a tinderbox. She condemned the federal government's handling of the situation and called the deployment of the troops provocative. Governor Gavin Newsom called the federal action unlawful. He demanded the National Guard troops to be withdrawn, a call backed by 22 Democratic governors across the country. It was the first time since the 1960s that the federal troops had been deployed to a state without the governor's consent. Meanwhile, solidarity protests erupted in San Francisco, where at least 60 people were arrested. Clashes occurred in Minneapolis and Chicago. The unrest rippled nationwide. One of the most heartbreaking parts of this story isn't just about the raids themselves. It's about what happens after people are taken. Many are ripped away from their families, sometimes without warning, with little chance to say goodbye or prepare. Parents separated from children. People detained far from their communities. All being held in facilities that are worse than what you'd expect from a prison. Because many of these detention centers are run by private contractors like GEO Group and Core Civic, companies with long history of serious complaints. Reports detail overcrowding, poor sanitation, lack of proper medical care, and neglect. People held for weeks or months with little access to basic needs or legal representation. It's a system that dehumanizes people, turning them into numbers rather than human beings with rights and dignity. What makes it worse is the way ICE carries out these arrests. Unlike criminal warrants, which must be signed by a judge after review, many of these immigration detentions rely on administrative warrants signed by ICE officers themselves. That means people can be detained without the usual due process projections, without a judge deciding if there's enough cause. Under the Biden administration, there's a period where ICE focused more narrowly on recent border crossers or people with serious criminal convictions. But in 2024 and 2025, that changed. Political pressure and escalating rhetoric has pushed ICE to resume broad enforcement. Home raids, workplace arrests, courthouse detainments across the country. In Southern California alone, ICE arrests have increased by 27% since January 2025. This isn't just enforcement. It's a deeply flawed process that tears families apart and locks people into conditions no one should endure. And it's happening right now in cities like Los Angeles. Let's be clear, this isn't just about ICE or immigration. It's about power, who has it, who uses it, and who they use it against. Immigration enforcement in this country has long walked a fine line between legality and cruelty. The raids we saw this weekend, conducted without transparency, targeting working people, and escalating into violent confrontations, are just the latest chapter in a much bigger story. The tactics aren't new, but the political climate is. Trump, having reclaimed the presidency in 2024, ran on a platform of mass deportations and hardline immigration enforcement. And now we're seeing those promises take shape, quickly and aggressively. By deploying federal troops to an American city without state approval, that's a line we haven't seen crossed in decades. It's a warning sign of how far this administration is willing to go. And LA is only the testing ground. What happens in LA, how people react, how local leaders respond, how the media covers it, sets a tone for what could come next. In other cities, in other communities, maybe even where you live. This is a moment where we have to choose. Are we going to normalize this? Are we going to look away? Or are we going to stand up? Because here's the truth. Silence is complicity. When we don't speak up, we let power operate unchecked. When we ignore injustice because it doesn't touch us directly, that makes it easier for injustice to grow. The people being targeted right now, they're our neighbors, our coworkers, our classmates, our friends. They're human beings, and no one deserves to live in fear. No one deserves to be ripped away from the families because of a broken system that values punishment over compassion. I think it's really important to remember one simple truth. America was built by immigrants. From the very beginning, people have come here seeking a better life, fleeing hardship, prosecution, or simply chasing a dream. Immigrants built our railroads, started businesses, raised families, and shaped the culture and economy of this nation. Immigration is fundamental to the American story. It's a part of who we are. But today, it feels like we're flipping that story upside down. Yes, every country has the right, the responsibility to control its borders. Checks and balances exist for a reason. But there has to be a better way to do it than what we're seeing right now. Families torn apart, communities terrified, people being ripped from their homes with little regard for due process or humanity. And one of the biggest misconceptions, that these deportations only target Latino communities. Now, the reality is much more complex. While roughly 75% of undocumented immigrants come from Mexico, Central, and South America, that leaves 25% from all over the world, Asia, Africa, Europe, communities you might not immediately think of. Recent cases show ICE reach goes far beyond just one group. A Danish man in Mississippi detained just before his naturalization meeting. A British tourist held over visa issues and later released. A Russian-born Harvard researcher who faces detention and deportation fears. And countless Asian immigrants with deep roots here living in constant fear. Immigration enforcement isn't just about one ethnicity or group. It affects people of many backgrounds, each with their own stories and hopes. So when we talk about the impact of raids and deportations, it's important to remember the full picture. This isn't just about policy or politics. It's about real human lives. Lives that don't fit into neat boxes or simple narratives. As we face this moment, we must ask, how do we create a system that's fair, humane, and effective? One that respects the law, but also honors the people who make America what it is. So what can we actually do right now? First, stay informed. This is complex and fast-moving. Follow trusted local news sources, read in-depth coverage, and understand what's happening beyond the headlines or social media noise. Second, support legal and advocacy organizations working on the ground. Groups like the Immigration Defenders Law Center, CHERLA, and the ACLU of Southern California are providing critical legal aid, resources, and pushing for policy and change. Donate if you can, volunteer your time, or help amplify their work by sharing their stories. Third, contact your elected representatives. Local, state, and especially federal. Call, email, or write letters urging them to oppose harmful immigration enforcement tactics, to protect immigration communities, and to push for humane immigration reform. Pressure counts, especially in a divided political environment. Fourth, engage in community support networks. Whether that means helping immigrant families access housing, healthcare, food, or simply offering emotional support to those affected, small acts of solidarity can have a big impact. Fifth, use your voice wisely and peacefully. This isn't about confrontation or violence. It's about pushing for change through democracy and compassion. Share accurate information, have conversations with friends and family, and hold leaders accountable for policies that impact millions of lives. And finally, reflect. Ask yourself, what kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of country do you believe in? And what role you can play in shaping it. Because change doesn't come from a single protest or a single video. It comes from people deciding over and over again that they won't accept injustice as normal. I know this video might feel heavy. It should. But I also hope it leaves you feeling empowered. Because the truth is, we're not powerless. We have more power than we think, especially when we come together. To my immigrant neighbors, friends, and community members, I see you. I stand with you. And to everyone watching, don't look away. Don't scroll past, and don't assume someone else will fix it. This is on all of us. Thanks for watching. Please share this, please take action, and please, let's keep showing up for each other. Stay safe out there.